Most of us know what $6 looks like at a glance. It's pretty much the same with $600. $60,000 is not so instantaneous. And with $6 million, many of us have to count the O's. $600 million is an enormous amount of money, and it looks like this. Have you ever wondered what $60 billion looks like? It is what workplace injuries and illnesses cost the Australian economy every year. When you consider that 1/3 of all workers' compensation claims in Australia are manual handling related, it would suggest that it is time for all of us to take a little time to think about how we approach our manual handling tasks at work. If your job entails any sort of lifting, pushing, pulling, holding, throwing, restraining or carrying, or you tackle repetitive tasks like packing, assembling, cleaning or sorting, then you perform manual handling tasks at work. In this video, we're going to share several ideas with you as to how you can minimize your chances of becoming a manual handling statistic. But before showing you how, we want you to take a break now and think about why. Perhaps one of the reasons manual handling injuries are so prolific is that workers tackle seemingly mundane tasks with little consideration of the risks or consequences at hand and can get injured. If we had to perform a job up here, we would all be extremely careful because of the plainly obvious risks we'd be faced with if we happened to make one wrong move. But here, John doesn't perceive any such danger. He has been tackling this task the same way for years, and his bad manual handling habits over time are a little like the bending of this paper clip. The musculoskeletal system is getting weaker and weaker, and it may just be something as simple as bending over in the shower or tying up his shoelaces, and snap. Manual handling injuries, illnesses, and other diseases can occur suddenly or over a long period of time. Most jobs include some sort of manual handling, so we can confidently say that you could be at risk. No matter how minimal you believe your work to be, common causes include incorrect lifting, bending or reaching for items incorrectly, slouch sitting or incorrect posture, twisting or jerking movements, a lack of appropriate rest, obesity or poor nutrition, stressful working conditions, and living habits. Do you think John may have been a bit more careful if he knew the consequences of his bad habits were this?
It looks like the wear and tear from repeated stresses on your spine have given you a condition called spinal stenosis. It would appear as if the outer rim of one of your spinal discs has ruptured into the spinal canal, thereby reducing the size of the canal and causing compression and pain. So we're going to have to perform a procedure called a lumbar laminectomy to relieve that pressure. So let me explain how that works. First of all, we place you face down on an operating frame and we give you a general anaesthesia to put you to sleep. And then we make a small incision about 75 to 100 millimetres long in your lower back. Then we use a retractor to pull apart the muscle and the fatty tissue of your spine to reveal the lamina. We remove a portion of the lamina, and that reveals the ligamentum flavum, which is an elastic ligament that helps connect two vertebrae. So then we cut an opening in the ligamentum flavum to reach the spinal canal. And once the compressed nerve can be seen, we can then determine the cause of the compression and relieve the pressure on that spinal nerve. We then simply put all the muscle and the soft tissue back in place and stitch you up. The success rate is favourable. At least 70 to 80% of patients will achieve significant improvement in function. But there can be significant ongoing issues. There can be infection, there can be nerve damage and ongoing pain. Well, now that I've explained the procedure to you, are you ready to proceed with your spinal surgery?
We feel the number one strategy is to know and be mindful at all times that you are breakable. Your musculoskeletal system can become weakened from bad habits, and those bad habits must be broken. You have all no doubt heard of keeping your back straight and the load tucked into your body when lifting and carrying. Here is a severe back accident just waiting to happen. This worker is committing the mortal sin of lifting a heavy load. By lifting that far away from his body, he's asking for a back injury. In fact, if that were a 10-kilo load, he would be putting approximately 700 kilos of pressure on his lower spine. Let me explain. The spine is made up of a series of bones called vertebrae. Between each of these vertebrae is a shock-absorbing structure called a disc, which is made up of two parts, the inner and outer layer. The inner area is called a nucleus, which is roughly spherical in shape and filled with a semi-fluid jelly-like substance. Containing 88% water, this nucleus is kept intact and under pressure by several layers of strong fibers which form the outer or peripheral part of the disc. The term slip disc is actually a misnomer because each disc is attached firmly to the vertebrae above and below it. However, the disc may be damaged by the tearing of those outer layers of fiber. Without you feeling any pain when pressure is exerted on the disc, the nucleus pushes out, and that pushing out effect creates tiny tears in the layers of fiber surrounding it. When that pressure becomes too great, it creates so many tears that a weak spot will form, causing the disc to bulge and in some cases even rupture. When that occurs and you have the disc pressing against one of these nerves, suddenly you will have back pain of the most enormous and excruciating order. Obviously, the lower this disc is in the spine, the more pressure it has to withstand. The two lowest discs have to support the rest of the spine and the torso. This amounts to about 50 kilos in weight. Now, because of its roughly spherical shape, the nucleus operates in the same way that a ball placed between two planes would operate. When that 50-kilo weight of the trunk is exerted from directly above, the pressure from the nucleus is set out at all angles. However, when you bend forward, there are two things to consider about that 50-kilo weight of the trunk. Firstly, because the center of gravity of the torso was approximately here, a levering effect takes place when you bend forward. In other words, the further you bend forward, the more pressure you place on the disc. For example, a person bending this far forward increases that 50-kilo pressure to 350 kilos. That's a ratio of 7:1. Secondly, instead of that 350 kilo of pressure being displaced evenly by the nucleus because of the bending forwards motion, it will push and therefore place pressure in one direction only, backwards. Now that's with someone just simply bending forward. Ask him to lift, say, a 10-kilo object from that position with his arms outstretched, and with the levering effect taken into account, you are asking him to more than double that 350 kilogram of pressure on his lower spine. Studies have shown that it takes only 800 kilogram to smash or rupture a healthy disc in a 20-year-old spine. But because a spine deteriorates with age, just 450 kilos in someone 50 years or over. By simply keeping your back straight and the load tucked into your body, in this case, the pressure on the lowest disc in your spine would be reduced from 700 kilos to 100 kilos, not to mention virtually eliminating the pressure by the nucleus solely on the back of the disc. Take time to look at the manual handling tasks in your workplace. Think about the possible risks associated with these tasks and look at ways these risks can be reduced or eliminated. Areas to consider when assessing risk are how often you perform the manual handling task, how long it takes you, whether bending, twisting, stretching or reaching is involved, the weight of the object, the organization of the work, your skill and experience in performing the task, the appropriateness and condition of any mechanical aids you are using, the nature of the object you are handling, whether it is slippery, wet, cold or sharp, or in the case of a person, whether they are heavy, light, can assist or resist, and other factors like your age and general health could also have some bearing. There is now legislation in place that requires employers to look at manual handling tasks in their workplace, to assess the risk associated with performing these tasks, and to introduce ways to eliminate or reduce the risks. Identifying the risks might include analysing your workplace injury records to find out the areas and tasks where injuries have occurred. Also, look at the objects to be handled, their size, shape, structure and weight. Consult with employees and safety reps about their concerns and look at individual tasks and the duration and frequency of the task. Think about the condition of the workplace. Is the lighting adequate? Is the floor slippery? And so on. And how about the level of training and experience of your workers? When controlling the risks, your first option should be to look at redesigning the task to either eliminate or reduce the risk. If that is not practical, maybe look at changing the layout of the workplace, like placing regularly handled items at waist height to reduce lifting whilst bending. If that is impractical, then you could redesign the object to be handled. Could you make it larger so a forklift does the lifting, or could you make it smaller to make it easier to handle for you? Could a mechanical aid do the lifting and moving of heavy materials and loads? Either way, workers should be trained up on proper manual handling and the prevention of back injury. A very simple remedy is to reduce repetitive tasks by varying work patterns. There are hundreds of mechanical aids, all designed to minimize manual handling in the workplace. If you are fortunate enough to work with an organization who has invested in mechanical aids, it is important that you do your part and utilize them. Think about what aids could benefit your workplace. Always discuss any ideas you have with management or your WH&S representative. If a mechanical aid is not available and lifting of an object just has to be done, a correct lifting technique could save you years of pain later. Always semi-squat to lift or lower an object. Never bend at the waist. Keep the lower part of your back bowed in while bending over. Keep the weight as close to your body as possible. In the case of a lower level lift, stand as much over the object as possible. Bow your back in and raise yourself with your head first. Turn with your feet, not the body. Never jerk or twist. Consider a dual lift if an item is too awkward or too heavy to be lifted by just one person. In a dual lift, there should always be one person to call the action, so lifting is done simultaneously and smoothly. Remember, our most precious possession in our lives is our health, and it is hugely dependent on a healthy musculoskeletal system. It dictates our lifestyles and everything we undertake on a daily basis. Before we go, we'd like to share with you some do's and don'ts when it comes to manual handling. Always do take a moment to assess all tasks prior to performing them. Example, what do I need to move? Is there a safer way of doing the task? Do I have a clear path to follow? Use mechanical aids, such as trolleys wherever possible. Always seek help from a colleague if the load is too heavy or awkward to handle on your own. Stretch and warm up before you start a task. Bend your knees, keep your back straight and engage your stomach muscles when lifting items, regardless of the weight. Lift in the zone between your knees and your shoulders wherever possible. Ensure the load remains close to your body, especially when carrying. Report any early signs of pain or discomfort to your manager. And never attempt to lift, pull or carry items that you know are too heavy for you. Repeatedly lift from or place items below knee height or above shoulder height. Twist your body when lifting or carrying. Take shortcuts from known safe procedures. Exert extra force if the load or item is stuck or awkward to move. We hope this video has had enough impact on you and your workmates so that you maintain a healthy musculoskeletal system and none of you ever have to meet one of these guys face to face.